The church doors had barely opened when the bride disappeared without a trace, leaving behind a heartbroken family, hundreds of stunned guests, and a groom standing alone at the altar with tears he refused to let anyone see. The whispers spread through the crowd like wildfire. Some pitied him. Others mocked him. But no one expected that, before the afternoon sun reached its highest point, a quiet young woman with no expensive dress, no grand entrance, and no dream of becoming anyone's bride would make a decision that would change every life inside that church forever. Before we continue this unforgettable journey, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you love, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps our community continue sharing stories that remind us that even broken hearts can find their way home. Harriet Lawson had never imagined that the happiest day of her younger sister's life would become the most painful day their family had ever endured. She had spent the entire morning helping arrange flowers, calming nervous relatives, and making sure everything was perfect. While everyone admired the beautiful decorations, Harriet quietly worked in the background, unnoticed as she always had been. She was the dependable daughter, the practical one who sacrificed her own dreams so others could chase theirs. Her younger sister, Celeste, had always been the adventurous spirit, charming everyone with her smile and confidence. Their parents adored both daughters, but everyone knew that Celeste was the center of every celebration. Only minutes before the ceremony, panic erupted inside the bridal room. Celeste had vanished. On the vanity sat a folded letter stained with tears. She confessed she had fallen in love with another man months earlier but had been too frightened to tell anyone. Unable to continue living a lie, she had left before saying her vows, asking for forgiveness she knew she did not deserve. Harriet watched her parents collapse under the weight of humiliation. Her mother's hands trembled uncontrollably while her father stared silently at the floor, unable to process what had happened. Outside, curious guests whispered louder with every passing second. Reporters who had gathered because of the wealthy Harrington family began taking photographs of the confusion unfolding outside the church. The groom, Everett Harrington, stood alone near the altar, refusing to leave. He came from one of the city's most respected families, but his reputation had never interested him. He had accepted the marriage because he believed commitment was built on trust and patience rather than overwhelming romance. Now that trust had shattered in front of everyone he knew, Harriet noticed something no one else seemed to see. Everett wasn't angry. He wasn't embarrassed by the gossip surrounding him. He simply looked devastated, as though someone had quietly stolen every hope he carried into that church. As relatives argued about canceling the ceremony and escaping the public humiliation, Everett walked toward Harriet's father and gently placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Instead of blaming anyone, he apologized for the pain everyone was experiencing, even though none of it was his fault. His kindness during such humiliation stunned Harriet more than anything else. She realized that one selfish decision had destroyed two families in a single afternoon. Without fully understanding why, Harriet stepped forward. Her voice shook as she made the impossible offer. She would become the substitute bride. The church fell into complete silence. Guests gasped. Family members stared at her in disbelief. Her mother immediately protested, insisting Harriet was sacrificing her own future to repair someone else's mistake. Harriet quietly explained that she wasn't trying to replace her sister. She wasn't pretending nothing terrible had happened. She simply refused to let two innocent families remain forever broken by one person's fear. Everett looked directly into Harriet's eyes for a long moment. There was no romance in that glance. Only honesty. He told her that he would never ask anyone to marry him out of pity or obligation. Harriet answered with equal sincerity. She wasn't offering pity. She was offering courage. If they both entered the marriage understanding that trust would need time to grow, perhaps something genuine could eventually rise from the ashes of disappointment. The minister hesitated. The parents cried. The guests waited. Finally, after careful discussion and with everyone's full consent, the ceremony continued. Harriet walked toward the altar wearing a simple emergency bridal gown borrowed from the church's small clothing room, carrying flowers that had originally been prepared for someone else. Nothing about the moment looked perfect. Yet somehow, everything felt more honest than before. Their vows were quiet but sincere. They promised patience instead of perfection. Respect instead of unrealistic expectations. Faith instead of certainty. When the ceremony ended, applause slowly filled the church, not because people had witnessed a fairy tale, but because they had witnessed extraordinary courage. The following months tested every promise Harriet and Everett had made. The media labeled Harriet the substitute bride as though she had no identity of her own. Strangers questioned whether Everett secretly resented her. Some relatives insisted the marriage would never survive because it had begun under such unusual circumstances. Harriet carried every cruel headline silently. She refused interviews. She avoided defending herself. Instead, she focused on building a peaceful home. Everett noticed countless little things about his new wife that nobody else appreciated. She remembered birthdays without reminders. She prepared meals for elderly neighbors. She volunteered at community shelters every afternoon. She repaired old family photo albums that had begun falling apart. She celebrated everyone's successes while expecting no praise for herself. For the first time in years, Everett discovered what quiet love looked like. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It simply appeared every day through kindness. One afternoon, Harriet received an unexpected letter from Celeste. Months had passed without contact. The letter described regret so deep that every sentence seemed written through tears. Celeste admitted that the relationship she had run away for had ended almost immediately. She had mistaken excitement for love and abandoned everyone who truly cared about her. She begged Harriet not for forgiveness, but simply for permission to come home and apologize. Harriet held the letter for a long time before showing Everett. Many people expected Harriet to reject her sister forever. Instead, she quietly prepared lunch for the following afternoon. When Celeste finally arrived, she looked nothing like the confident woman who had left the church months earlier. She appeared exhausted, ashamed, and frightened. The moment she saw Harriet, she collapsed into uncontrollable tears. There were no dramatic speeches. No angry accusations. Harriet simply embraced her younger sister. Sometimes forgiveness begins before words are even spoken. Their parents arrived shortly afterward. Old wounds reopened. Pain resurfaced. But healing also quietly entered the room. Celeste accepted responsibility without excuses. She admitted she had broken trust that might never fully return. She promised never again to choose fear over honesty. Their father, after many silent minutes, finally placed his hand upon her shoulder. No family returns to what it once was after betrayal. But families can become stronger when truth replaces pride. As another year passed, Harriet and Everett slowly discovered something neither had expected. They had genuinely fallen in love. Not because of one extraordinary wedding day. Because of hundreds of ordinary afternoons. Because they chose each other repeatedly through kindness. Because respect slowly became affection. Affection became friendship. Friendship became unwavering love. One sunny afternoon, Everett surprised Harriet by taking her back to the same church. She smiled nervously, remembering the painful memories connected to that place. Instead of entering immediately, Everett handed her a small wooden box. Inside rested the simple wedding ring she had first worn beside the borrowed dress. Next to it lay another ring. He gently explained that the first ceremony had been about saving two broken families. Today, he wanted to ask her something entirely different. Standing beneath the warm afternoon sunlight outside the church entrance, he knelt before the woman who had changed his life. This time there were no frightened relatives. No gossip. No expectations. Only gratitude. He asked Harriet if she would choose him again, not out of duty, not because circumstances demanded it, but because their hearts now belonged together. With joyful tears, Harriet accepted. They entered the church alone. The minister, who remembered everything, smiled warmly as they quietly renewed the vows they had once spoken through uncertainty. This time every word carried deeper meaning. Not because life had become easier. Because love had become stronger. Months later, Harriet organized a charity foundation supporting abandoned brides, struggling families, and young couples facing unexpected hardships. Rather than allowing her painful experience to define her, she transformed it into hope for others. Everett proudly stood beside her, watching countless families receive encouragement because one woman had refused to let bitterness become her future. Even Celeste became part of the foundation, using her own mistakes to help others understand the importance of honesty before commitment. She never erased the pain she caused, but she spent every day proving people can grow beyond their worst decisions. The substitute bride was never truly a replacement. She became the person everyone had needed all along. Before this story comes to its heartfelt conclusion, we would love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment telling us this. Do you believe forgiveness makes people stronger, or are there some mistakes that can never truly be forgiven? Your thoughts may encourage someone who is carrying a heavy burden today. Harriet often reflected on the moment she walked toward the altar wearing a borrowed dress. At the time, she believed she was rescuing two broken families. Years later, she realized that the greatest miracle had not been saving a wedding. It had been discovering that real love is rarely found in perfect plans. More often, it grows quietly from compassion, patience, sacrifice, and the courage to stand beside someone when life unexpectedly falls apart. The brightest futures are not always built on flawless beginnings. Sometimes they begin with broken promises, healing hearts, and ordinary people choosing extraordinary kindness. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May this story remind you that even when life seems to replace your dreams with disappointment, hope has a beautiful way of writing a better ending than you ever imagined.